have already discussed that aquaculture relies heavily on feed, and the cost of feed in aquaculture, or you can say the input cost of aquaculture due to feed, may be anywhere between 50 to 80%, depending on what kind of species you are culturing, what kind of culture system you have adopted. Depending on that, the feed cost may vary, and that can, you know, be anywhere between 50 to 80%. And it depends on, if you are raising carnivorous fish, or if you are raising herbivorous fish, or if you are raising omnivorous fish. So depending on that, you will have to feed them higher protein content, or what, any special kind of feed ingredient. So that will vary the cost accordingly, and the availability, and the cost input in the processing of those ingredients. And also, not only this, but even the composition, that whatever composition you are having, nutrient composition in the ingredient, the proximate composition in the ingredient, whether those components, those nutrients are in the utilizable form, or they are available for efficient utilization by the fish species. So all that plays significant role in calculating the cost of the feed. In fact, if you go on um, developing feed for different stages of the fish, different stages of the fish may require different nutrients. So for example, if I can tell you about Nile tilapia, or you can take example of any other fish species. During the early stages, during the larval stages, when they start feeding, the nutrient requirement, the protein requirement especially, which is the costliest component, that is about 50%, 45%, 50% protein is given usually. And as the fish progresses in age, in the life stage, then we keep on reducing it. For example, in the fry stage, you can get it to 45% crude protein, maybe between 40 to 45%. And when it will grow further, you may decrease it again 35 to 40%, and maybe ultimately for the grow out, or the raising the adult fish or market size fish, you can get it around 30% of crude protein level in the diet. But if you are raising brood stocks, then again you will have to raise the protein component to a significant level. For example, in case of tilapia, sometimes 45% crude protein, or maybe even more, is given for good performance of the brood stock. So the cost is dependent, the feed cost is dependent on many factors, as I just gave you an example, on the life stage and their nutrient requirement. And it's not only that feed play significant role in only the cost, but it profoundly influences the quality, safety, and nutritional value of farmed fish. How it influences the quality and nutritional value of the farmed fish? That depends a lot on how much of the required nutrient you are feeding to the fish, and from which ingredient you are meeting that requirement. In fact, the source of ingredient, the method of processing that ingredient, the method of preparation of the diet, the type of diet, the feeding method, all this will be taken into account in order to calculate that whether we are getting the quality performance or not. If the inputs are good from the feed, then you are supposed to get fish of excellent nutritional quality. And if you are providing nutritionally balanced feed to the fish in a proper manner, adopting scientifically sound feeding and nutritional management strategies, then the fishes are supposed to be safer than their counterparts who are not getting these things. So, they may be less prone to attack from the pathogens. So, feed has a lot of role to play, even in addition to the cost. To make in fact your aquaculture practice economically viable. The quantity of feed requirement as well as the quality of feed requirement varies based on species feeding habits, whether it is herbivorous, whether it is carnivorous, whether it is omnivorous. Depending on that, it will vary. It may vary according to other things like physiological stage that we just discussed, that in which stage you are going to raise the fish, whether it is larval stage or it has just passed the larval stage and has come to fry stage or fingerling stage, young fish or grow out fish or broodstock, whatever life stage is there, the physiologically they need different kind of nutrients. And environmental conditions like temperature, availability of natural food. So, all these things may influence the performance of the aquaculture practice. So, by taking these things into account, you can manipulate the quantity and quality of feed ingredients. So, depending on, for example, that if you are preparing feed for any life stage and you already know that we need, say for example, 30% crude protein and maybe 7% or 10% of oil, and like that all other requirements you have at your hand. So, what you will do, you will just simply scan the ingredients which can provide these nutrients which are required by the fish, and ultimately you are going to prepare the feed and provide it to the fish. So, depending on the choice of the ingredient which is meeting the nutrient requirement of the target fish species, the cost may vary. Cost as well as the quality of your produce may vary. According to a recent report, aqua feed constitute approximately 4.2%. That 4.2% comes to about 52.9 million metric tons of the global compound feed production. The report indicates a 2.7% increase in global aqua feed production within the aquaculture sector. China, Vietnam, India, Norway and Indonesia have emerged as leading aquaculture feed producers. Earlier, we were not having feed production to the extent what we are having now, and earlier we were importing feed for high valued aquaculture species. But now in India also we are having facilities for feed production at large scale. And many other countries, it's not only that China is doing well, Vietnam nowadays is doing quite well in almost all the aquaculture activities, especially the fish production and the feed production also. Among European countries, Norway is performing very well. So, aquaculture, in fact, within the Asian countries, we all know that aquaculture is very popular and we are the leading countries in the world in terms of aquaculture produce. But other countries are also now doing aquaculture. Feed formulation is a scientific method of combining feed ingredients to meet nutrient requirements for aquaculture species in a cost-effective manner. Why we need to formulate feed? We can simply, just go and whatever feed is there, whatever leftover feed is there of maybe by human beings or by other animals, you can throw and feed to the fish. But we all know that may raise environmental concern as well as the nutrient requirement of the fish species which you are raising for a purpose that will not be met, that will be compromised. So, we need to specifically formulate that how much of what is needed in order to produce a diet which will be consumed by the fish, which will be liked by the fish, and which will meet the nutrient requirement of the fish species. That is very important. And for doing that, you need to have certain kind of formulation, that how we should proceed, how much of what ingredient we have to take in order to meet the nutrient requirement of the fish, or to produce the diet which is of the desired composition. So for that we need to have feed formulation. The main objective of feed formulation is to utilize knowledge of nutrient requirement, cost effectiveness, availability. I should say here that availability throughout the year, whenever you need, and abundance also. That is probably not written here. Abundance also, that it should be available abundantly. It's not like there is seasonal fluctuation, and in one season you are getting it, say for example 10 rupees per kg, and in other season you are getting it for 50 or 100 rupees per kg. Then it will not be economically viable. It will not remain cost effective. So these things should be taken into account, that I have discussed in detail in my previous lecture on feed ingredients and their approximate composition. Then their inclusion levels of feed ingredients based on nutrient composition. What we look for in the feed ingredients, their nutritive composition or nutrient composition, the digestibility of that ingredient, that is very important, and ANFs, anti-nutritional factors, that are present in those ingredients. It's not only that we have to look only for the protein. No, whatever the nutritive composition is of a particular ingredient, whether they are in the utilizable form, whether that can be easily digested and utilized by the candidate species that you are culturing. So all these things should be taken into account, and if there are any anti-nutritional factors, how we can take care of that, and in order to minimize or remove those the actions of those ANFs in the diet. The nutritionist who attempts to formulate a feed must have in-depth knowledge of the biology of the target fish species. This is very important. Sometimes what happens, we just go on that a particular fish species, say for example, is needing 25% crude protein diet or 35% crude protein diet, whatever percentage is there. We simply formulate and feed is prepared, now feed it to the fish. No, you need to have complete information, in-depth idea about biology of the target fish species. Biology means you must have the idea of what is the growth pattern, what is the food and feeding habit of that fish, what kind of food it prefers, whether it prefers only animal origin material, whether it prefers only plant origin material, whether it can feed on both kind of feed ingredients, whether all the life stages require similar kind of food items, or there are different stages. Maybe in some stages the fish requires more feed from animal origin and less from the plant origin. So all these things should be clear. And what is the reproductive biology, the feeding biology, accordingly you will have to adjust not only the ration but also the nutritional composition of the diet. So that we should be knowing. In-depth information must be there. Feeding behavior, I told you, and the purpose for which feed is being prepared. Purpose for which means what is your purpose of whether producing only fry, or nursing them to raise young ones, or you are raising broodstock, or you are raising marketable size fish. Whatever purpose is there and what kind of system you are using. So depending on these objectives, you have to formulate the diet. Formulation and preparation of fish feed is based on many considerations, many scientific and economic considerations. Like we should know nutrient requirements of the candidate species, of the species which you are culturing. What kind of nutrient requirements? Like proteins, you should know that what is the crude protein requirement or whole protein requirement, the total protein requirement of that particular fish species for different life stages and specifically for the life stage which you are targeting. Say for example, we are getting fingerlings and stocking them to raise them to marketable size, then our requirement is very specific, and we need to have a specific protein requirement for that stage, that particular stage. So, depending on life stage, the physiological state, you need to know the protein requirement of the candidate species. Similarly for fats, similarly for energy, vitamins, minerals. Sometimes we just say that total vitamin requirement or total mineral requirement, but it's always better to go for different categories of minerals or vitamins, if not individual information is available on the requirement of each amino acid and each mineral and vitamins. Then total protein, total fat is different thing. We must also know about essential amino acid requirements, because that has to be provided from outside. So we should have the information of essential amino acid requirement of that particular fish species. If information on that particular fish species is not available, then we can explore the information on the related species, the closely related species, whatever closeness is possible. Fatty acids, again the same thing, that we must know that what is the requirement of maybe N3, N6 series fatty acids for each stage of the culture that I have already talked about, that what stage you are targeting. Depending on that, the requirement increases or decreases in different life stages. For example, if you are targeting broodstock, then maybe some of the fatty acids may be required in a different quantity. Some of the vitamins play very important role in the process of maturation and spawning, and then some of the amino acids may also be required in different quantity. And depending on your purpose, sometimes finishing diets, as we say that when, for example, in case of salmon, the Antarctic krill meal is considered one of the best diets for as finishing diet in case of salmon. But or to incorporate color, desired color in the fish fillet, you may need to look for appropriate ingredient. So all these things should be written first, should be documented, that what are your basic requirements and what are the nutrient requirements of that particular species. Feeding habits, whether it is showing herbivory, carnivory, or they are omnivore, which zone they are occupying for feeding, maybe if they are surface feeder, column feeder, bottom feeder, method of feeding, what they prefer, swallowing or nibbling or what. So depending on this, you will have the information that is required for formulation or preparation of diet which will give better results. For example, for herbivores, you will have a different strategy, different choice of ingredients. For carnivores, again, different choice of ingredients, different requirement of the nutrients by the fish. And again, for this omnivore also, we need to have information on these aspects. Then according to zones of feeding, whether they are surface feeder or column feeder or bottom feeder, depending on that, you will have to increase or decrease the density. You will have to prepare a diet which is either floating or fast sinking or slow sinking, and you will have to take into account the nutrient leaching part also, and that will be very useful in taking care of method of feeding. Information of ingredients, what we need, what kind of information we need on ingredients. Availability, here again it is not written, availability and abundance of ingredients. in your region where you are going to procure from. That is one of the, I should say, essential part if you are looking for cost effective diet. So that ingredient should be available. What you are going to choose from, I have given you a list of a variety of feed ingredients that can be utilized for preparing fish feed, and you can select from them, but depending on, this is one criteria, availability and abundance of that ingredient which is appearing suitable for you for incorporation. Its nutrient composition, whether it is according to the need of the fish, whether it can be meeting the nutrient requirement of the fish species. So nutrient composition of ingredient is very important. Then cost of many ingredients. Some ingredients are very good, but they are very costly. So we will have to avoid that. That is something which we should look for. That we should not use very costly ingredient which will increase the cost of production of your produce. So ultimately you may be asking for more price in the market and you are not getting that price. So profitability will be adversely affected, and that will ultimately adversely impact the economic viability of the aquaculture practice at large. Seasonal and our geographical variations in the availability. So maybe they are not available at certain places all the times, or they are not available in all the seasons in all the places. So that you will have to take care. That is a big factor in deciding the cost. We should try not to put more cost in transportation by taking the ingredient from far places. So all these things are very important in determining the effectiveness of your operation. Type of availability, dry or wet, in which form it is available, whether the ingredient is available in the form in which you are going to incorporate it directly into the feed, or you need to further process that ingredient in order to utilize that into the fish feed. So that kind of thing you should take into consideration, whether it is solvent extracted, mechanically extracted, whatever. So, and all these aspects on ingredients you will have to have before going for formulation and feed preparation. Then processing at feed mill, type of feed preparation, whether the feed is going to be mash or crumbles or pellet, flakes, sinking pellet or floating pellet. If it is pellet, then what type of pellet, type of machinery used. Based on this information, whether they are mash or crumbles or pellets or flakes, sinking pellet or floating pellet, type of machinery used. Based on this, binder addition, heat labile additives addition in feed formulation may vary. So you will have to keep information on all these crucial parameters before starting the formulation and preparation of feed. Ingredients in fish feed formulation, micronutrients required in large quantities. We all know that the micronutrients like proteins, fats and carbohydrates, they are required in large quantities. They are the foundation pillars upon which the health, growth and overall vitality of fish stands. Provide the necessary energy to sustain daily activities and play a pivotal role in various metabolic processes. These are some basic things that we already know, but we need here to brush it up in order to understand its significance. And proteins, we know they are primary building blocks, and fats are kind of energy reservoirs, and carbohydrates are utilized as immediate source of energy. Then micronutrients are also very important. Although they are required in less quantity, but their role is very crucial. We know about the role of vitamins and minerals in the overall metabolic processes and life activities. So these vitamins or minerals, even those trace elements, they are very important to be included in the diet. Now, procedure of feed formulation. Essential nutrients required. We must have the information on what are different essential nutrients which are required. Protein, how much of protein that is required, what is the amino acid profile that you are looking for, what is the fatty acid profile that you are looking for in the final diet, carbohydrate, how much you need to include carbohydrate, and then same thing, vitamins, if you can, individual vitamin requirements, then that has to be listed again, or combined total vitamin requirement, at least that should be broken into fat soluble and water soluble vitamins. And minerals, in the total requirement of the minerals, the energy you are going to have in that diet, energy protein ratio, energy protein balance that we have to make in the diet. All this information you must first have at your hands. So, based on that, we will go for selection of ingredients, that this is our requirement, we are objective, we are looking for, and what kind of ingredients we should select. So, when you are going to select fish feed ingredients, then again, based on your requirement, you will also have to scan the composition of those individual ingredients, that which one you are going to carefully select, which will help you out in meeting the requirements that you desire. Digestibility of the ingredients, that is very important, that I have already explained to you. Then quality control of the ingredients, you must use fresh ingredients. That is one of the very important part, because that will ultimately spoil everything if you are not taking control of the quality. And of course, the cost, because this is the maximum cost through feed that we are having in aquaculture. So, you will have to take into account cost also. Then basal feed formulation, fixed part of the feed, certain components you need to fix. So, you should also have information that what are the components that we need to fix, that you can list. Then whether we have fixed supplements, then whether in the form of vitamins or minerals, maybe sometimes we have premixes of these, or you can prepare the premix according to the individual vitamin or mineral requirement, and prepare that and leave room while formulating in your formula, leave room for these supplements, like room for vitamin premix, room for mineral premix, or whatever antioxidants, mold inhibitors, etc. Whatever you have to add, you will have to decide it first, how much room you are going to give to these supplements. That has to be taken care of. Then binder or filler if you are going to use, and then after that, calculating essential nutrient levels for final formulation. Schematic diagram of the links between broad feed types, nutrition gained, and the productivity of cultured stock. Production here, it has been taken as arbitrary scale. If we are doing extensive culture, we have discussed in detail in my previous lectures, you can get it. So, whether monoculture or polyculture, whatever you are culturing, but you are going for extensive, that means you are not providing any feed from outside, you are not supplementing any feed. The fish will be depending only on whatever food is available in the natural environment. So, maybe fertilizers, organic, inorganic, you can use or you may not use. So, productivity is very low compared to other systems. When we go for semi-intensive, again whether monoculture or polyculture, here what we can do, we can sometimes you will see that in many places, in countries like ours and many other Asian countries also, sometimes farmers have only access to only one ingredient. For example, here it is written rice bran, or a single high quality ingredient, dried fish, or depending on which species you are culturing. Then sometimes cooked and mixed ingredients, and sometimes they try to prepare proper feeds for those fishes which are being raised in semi-intensive aquaculture. So, if you are doing these actions, then you can see here the growth varies, and it is quite high compared to extensive farming. Here in intensive, we are again depending on type of feed you are using. You can feed trash fish, commercial feeds, or if you are more particular of providing nutritionally balanced or wholesome feeds, then the production will increase further. Factors should be considered when formulating a practical fish feed within intensive aquaculture system, where we depend on only the feed from outside. Market value of the aquaculture species to be farmed, feeding behavior and digestive capacity of these species. In fact, market value of the aquaculture species to be farmed, I explained it earlier, that if we are producing feed very costly, although it is very nutritionally balanced, but maybe the quality is very good, but if it is very costly, then your produce will be also very costly, and you may not get the desired price in the market. So, ultimately that will adversely impact your economic viability of your aquaculture practice. Feeding behavior and digestive capacity of these species, that should be taken into consideration. We have discussed it earlier. Feed manufacturing process to be used, again this we have discussed. Dietary nutrient requirements of these species, we have already discussed. Available feed ingredient sources, digestibility of the ingredient sources, palatability of the feed, very important point. This also, if fish will not come to the feed, how it is going to feed the to consume the feed. So, that should be palatable. Ingredient handling, processing requirement prior to mixing or pelleting, maximum minimum dietary feed ingredient constraints, performance of the formulated feed, all this information we must first have at hand before going for the formulation. So, methods of fish feed formulation that what we adopt, what kind of methods are there which we are going to use for fish feed formulation. There are several methods employed by the nutritionists and feed manufacturers to design the perfect fish feed. Trial and error method, Pearson square method, algebraic equations like simultaneous equations for solving least cost analysis, linear programming or least cost formulation. So, these are the methods of feed formulation that are being used. Trial and error method of fish feed formulation involves creating different combinations of feed ingredients, then testing them on a group of fish and observing their growth and health, and determine which one is the optimal feed for getting good growth. Disadvantage of the trial and error method: it is time consuming, requires multiple feeding trials to find the optimal feed composition. There are great chances of waste involve feeding fish with suboptimal feed combinations during the trial process. Of course, you are going for trial and error, then you will have to do this, resulting in feed waste. So, less precise, may not achieve the exact nutritional balance compared to computer aided formulation methods or the other method. Pearson square method, one of the earliest tools in feed formulation and one of the most popular one, I should say, in formulating fish feed. Facilities of when you are going to formulate feed using Pearson's square method, it is quite simple, and you can do it if you are having basic understanding of the calculations. So, it helps to blend any two or more ingredients or products with different nutrient concentrations to yield a product with a specified nutrient concentration that you need. Until the invention of computers, this method was an essential tool in feed formulation. This has been very widely used for a long time. Nowadays, computers have come and we have many softwares that I will discuss later in my lecture. Feed formulation using Pearson square method, here we can understand, then I will give you an example also. What we have to do, first we have to make a square and then a square like this. Then place the desired percent crude protein in the middle of the square. I will give you the example in my later slides. In the middle of the square, whatever protein percentage you need, you have to write that. Calculate and place the percent crude protein of the protein rich ingredients. There are two type of ingredients that we have studied, protein rich ingredient and energy rich ingredient. So, calculate and place the percent crude protein of the protein rich ingredients in the upper left hand corner here. Calculate and place percent crude protein of the energy rich ingredients in the lower left hand corner here. Subtract the smaller number from the larger number diagonally. Whatever protein percentage you have written here, now diagonal subtraction has to be done. Whatever product comes that are required in the formulation, write them in the upper and lower right hand corner. That will be written here by diagonally subtracting the numbers. Add the total of two numbers on the right side. This we will add the numbers from on the right side. Divide the parts of each ingredient by the total parts and multiply by 100 to determine the percent of each ingredient needed. I will show you in the example in the later slides. Calculate the contribution of each ingredient in their respective part, either protein or energy, whatever you are calculating. Calculate the protein contribution from each ingredient. Sum of all protein contribution by the ingredients will give the required amount of crude protein, which we placed in the middle of the square. So, ultimately whatever you put in the middle, the protein requirement, you will get exactly that percentage. Here is the example we can understand. For example, suppose we have to make feed of 30% crude protein, and what are ingredients that you are going to use? Suppose you are using soybean meal that is having 54% crude protein, corn gluten feed which is having 24% crude protein, corn grain which is having only 10% crude protein, and soybean hulls having 12% crude protein. So, based on crude protein percentage, we can say that soybean meal and corn gluten feed, they are in the protein rich category, protein rich ingredients, and corn grain and soybean hulls, on the basis of the protein they contain, they may be categorized as energy rich ingredient. So, what we have to do? We have to put protein rich ingredients together. The protein contribution by these two ingredients, 54% by soybean meal and 24% by corn, and add them and divide by 2. So, you will get the average. This is based on the assumption that we are taking equal parts of equal quantity of these two protein rich ingredients. So, by doing this, we are having this number 39, and similarly you have to proceed for the energy rich ingredients. You have to write here the protein contribution from the two ingredients, then take an average, add them and divide by 2, you will get this number. Then subtraction has to be done. Even if the number is small, the negative sign will not be taken into account, and you will get 19 on this side and 9 on this side. When you will add, the number comes to 28. So, that is one part of the calculation. Then how we have to proceed? Parts of protein rich ingredient, that calculation you have made. Now, you have to calculate that what are the contributions. Parts of protein rich ingredient. In protein rich ingredients, you have taken 2 ingredients. So, first 19 by 28, 19 by this 19 by 28, that is representing protein rich ingredient, and multiplies by 100. So, they are contributing 67.86% of the protein. Contribution of soybean in protein rich ingredient, because you have taken 50% of both the ingredients, will be simply divided by 2. You will get the contribution of the ingredient, one ingredient, 33.93 from soybean and 33.93 from corn gluten. Parts of energy rich ingredients, Again, go here, 9 divided by 28, 9 divided by 28 multiplied by 100, you are getting 32.14% of the total protein which is being contributed by energy rich ingredients. And how much is being contributed then by soybean hulls and how much by corn grain, that you can divide by this 32.14 by 2 and you will get the exact contribution of each of these ingredients, 16.07 each. Now, protein contribution, what we fixed, whether we have got it or not. Protein contribution of ingredients in final formulation. 54% crude protein soybean meal we had taken. So, how to calculate 54 multiplied by 33.93, that is the contribution in the formulation, and 54% is the protein content of that ingredient soybean meal. 54 multiplied by 33.93 divided by 100, you will get contribution from protein contribution from soybean meal. So, protein contribution from soybean meal is 18.32, from corn gluten feed it is 8.14, from soybean hulls 1.93 and from corn grain 1.61. If you will take the total, you will get the protein percentage that you desired in your feed. So, very simple calculation, and most of the time, you know, it always works very well for most of these species. Now, other method, algebraic equations, simultaneous equations for solving least square analysis. Simultaneous equations can be used to solve simple feed formulations once the ingredients have been chosen. The method is preferable to trial and error substitutions. Of course, it is better than trial and error. An experienced formulator is needed to produce a very good formulation in a short time by substitution and recalculation. So, what is the first step? To define the nutrient levels, protein and digestible energy desired in the feed, that you must know that what you need. So, you can have that written. Second step is the formulation process. In the formulation process is to choose ingredients, choose correct appropriate ingredients and to list the protein and digestible energy content of each. This is what we are needing, this is what we are having from different ingredients, and the third step is to list the ingredients which will be in the feed formulation, in the final feed formulation at fixed levels, and to calculate the contribution of each ingredient to the desired level of protein and digestible energy in the feed. So, you can do this accordingly. These values are then added and the total subtracted from the desired levels in the final feed. In the example, levels of soybean meal, poultry byproduct meal, the table you have seen earlier, and vitamin and mineral supplements are fixed, while the levels of fish meal, wheat middlings and fish oil in the formulations are variable. So, it depends on your choice, the requirement of the species. The fourth step is to determine the appropriate levels of various ingredients in the formulations using simultaneous equations. So, by manipulating, by playing with the contributions, you can have the desired formulation which will be very better for the culture of your fish species. So, there are series of calculations based on which you can calculate the final formulation. In the above, solution of the simultaneous equation yields the following. Here it is written also, here also it is written 43.7 kg per 100 kg diet of fish meal, then other ingredients. Here it is again written fish meal 43.7 kg per 100 kg, wheat middling 22.4 kg per 100 kilogram of feed, and fish oil 11.22 kg per 100 kilogram of feed. If you remember, we kept these three ingredients as variable, others were fixed. So, you got the value of variables also by this method. The last step is to check the final feed levels of protein and digestible energy to ensure that the desired levels are present. So, you will have to recheck that whether you have got it or not. Then we have linear programming or least cost formulation. Nowadays, we all know that we are having softwares and programs for many of the calculations, and that makes our job very easy. Computers are used in the feed industry to calculate least cost formulations. The process by which this is done is called linear programming, which is very common, which involves the simultaneous solution of a series of linear equations. Linear programming has been used in animal feed formulation for over 40 years and is used almost exclusively in modern feed formulation in agriculture today. For simple formulations or for small feed manufacturers, hand calculations are often more practical when we are going for small scale farming. Then linear programming applied to least cost feed analysis is used to calculate the combination and levels of ingredients that provide the desired nutrient content of the diet at the minimum cost. The computer must have access to data on the nutrient content. Of course, you will have to provide data on each of the components that are going to be used by that software. And the nutrient content of each potential feed ingredient, which are obtained from feed composition tables, or we are having nowadays, we are having information on most of the ingredients. The cost of each ingredient must be provided along with the nutrient specification of the formulation. Only then it will be able to prepare cost effective formulation. Ingredient limits, if there are any limits that you wish to put on, then you will have to enter that also. And outputs vary with different computer, different kind of programs. Basically, outputs may vary, but this is an overview of feed formulation process, what we do in linear programming. In fact, the ingredients, the factors which are majorly taken into account are availability, price, and nutritional composition. These information you will have to provide for the software. And then we have what kind of ingredients we are going to use, and ingredient specific availability, price, and nutritional composition has to be provided beforehand. And then product specifications, what are your objectives, what are the limits that you have put on, nutrient limits, what is the percentage of different nutrients that you wish to have, ingredient limits, if you are fixing any ingredient to a specific level. So these things you will have to define, and then go for, if you are having these inputs, then go for formulation process, formulation step, and you will get the formula results, and that can be used for preparing the feed. If you formula results, if you are not satisfied with the formula results, that whatever restrictions you had on putting the ingredient limit or nutrient limit, if you are not getting it as desired, then you can reformulate and get the desired formulation and go for production. These are some of the softwares which are being used quite often in feed formulation, and now they are very popular in formulating the feed for aquaculture. Microsoft Excel with the add-in tool called Solver. Then we have WinFeed, Feed MU2, Ecomix, AFSO, Feed Mixer, FeedSoft, Edifo. We are having different kind of softwares, different kind of programs we are having for this purpose to prepare, to formulate a desired composition for aquaculture organisms feed. Thank you so much.